Hey there folks. So now I've gotten back from the field and I have my big haul of morels here and I need to figure out what I'm going to do with them. Obviously eating them fresh is the best way to go, and you can keep them fresh in your refrigerator for 3 to 5 days by putting them in a brown paper bag. Do not put them in an airtight container or a plastic container because they will get mushy and degrade much faster. But in a brown paper bag they'll be fine for a few days. After that, you need to think about how you're going to preserve them. You can either dehydrate them or you can freeze them. I'm going to go over both of those techniques in short order. But you also need to clean them before you do that. You also need to clean them before you eat them. And I'm going to show you the steps I do to clean my haul of morels, and then I'll show you the preservation steps. And then finally, we're going to go through and do a taste test comparison of the two primary preservation methods, that is dehydrated morels versus frozen. Okay, so the first thing you need to do before you eat or preserve your morels is you need to clean them off. And there's a lot of controversy about how is the best way to do this. For me, the best way to do this is to have them as clean as possible when you're coming in from the field. So think about that when you're out in the field harvesting them. But some people will soak them overnight for like 7 to 8 hours in cool or warm water. Some people will add salt to help kill the bugs that are in there. And some people will just do a very quick rinse underneath the sink for just a few seconds. There's a lot of variability in that, and I think that you need to explore some of the caveats that go along with each of those. I tend to take a more moderate approach because I've noticed that if you soak them for a long time, you'll see the water gets stained. It's sucking out a lot of the flavor, I think, out of the mushrooms, and they tend to get a little bit softer. So I soak them for 10 minutes in a saltwater bath solution in cold water, and that's it. I find that they stay relatively firm that way, and it drives, that little bit of salt water drives the bugs out of there and kills them really fast. So what I do is I'll take a big bowl, and for every pound of morels I put in here, I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of salt, and then I just soak them quickly for 10 minutes and then run them underneath the sink one by one just to make sure I clean off all the dirt bits and pine needles and things like that. And then I'll lay them out on something to dry momentarily before I start processing them, either for cooking or for preservation. Okay, so the first preservation technique I'm going to go over is a very easy and simple one, and that is freezing them. So all you need is a Ziploc bag, and you put your morels in there that you want to freeze. You need some flour and a cookie pan. So what you're going to do first is put the morels in the Ziploc bag. Take a little bit of flour. You don't want a lot of flour here. You're not trying to batter them. You just want to lightly dust them in flour. Then you're going to just take and shake that up and coat your morels nicely. And the flour is going to help them not stick to the pan when they freeze or to each other, so that they retain their original shape. After you have that done, you're going to take and place them on a cookie pan. And you want to spread them out so they're not touching as much as possible. Then you want to lay these down in a chest freezer or your freezer in above your refrigerator, and try to make it as level as possible so that they don't roll down on top of each other. There we go. And then we're just going to close the lid and let them freeze. It should just take a few hours. And then after you take them out, you can vacuum seal them, and you get this really nice looking frozen morels that don't stick together. And this will last for a long time in the freezer and can be used in a variety of cooking situations. Okay, the other preservation technique is dehydrating, which is actually pretty easy to do. The first thing you want to do is kind of separate out your morels by size. If they're smaller like this, I will just go ahead and dehydrate them whole. If they're bigger ones like this one, then I'm going to go ahead and cut those in half. So I'll go ahead and sort those out by their appropriate size, and then we'll get them onto the drying trays. Okay, then we want to go ahead and put them on their drying trays by their approximate size. So you want about the same size ones on the same trays together. And you want your thickest mushrooms near the heating elements so they'll dry out a little bit faster, so they all get done at about the exact same time. You definitely want to keep a lot of space between them so that they dry out quickly. Okay, we'll put the bottom tray on now. And then the heating tray on top. You want to set this to about 115 degrees. It'll take about 6-ish hours to do that. You want them to have less than 10% moisture, so they need to be pretty much brittle before you pull them out. If you're going to do it overnight, you can push it down to 100, 105 degrees, so it takes a little bit longer, but that way you don't over dehydrate them. And then just plug it in and get it started. And then what you'll end up with is you're going to lose about 90% of your weight from the mushrooms. So they'll shrink down quite a bit. This is about a half a pound to a little bit more than that. Goes down and dries out and goes into a single pint jar. And this is how I store them, in these pint jars, and then a cool, dry place. If you live somewhere humid and you're worried about moisture getting in there, you can always throw those little silicone packs, those dehydration packs inside there that come with lots of electronics and food and things like that. But these are ready to be stored for years and be used in cooking. Okay, to rehydrate our morels, what I'm going to do is put a few of them in a glass container or bowl here. And they will regain about 60 to 70% of their weight after they are rehydrated. And then I'm going to pour near boiling water on top of them and let them soak for about 30 minutes. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes and our morels have hydrated. Now, one of the benefits of having rehydrated morels is you get this really delicious mushroomy broth that you can use in sauces and gravies and things like that. So you definitely don't want to throw away that broth, but you want to remove all of your morels from the water. And they've rehydrated very well. They feel somewhat similar to fresh morels. Obviously still a little bit smaller and a little bit firmer, more rubbery, I would say, in their consistency. But like I said, save that broth. That's one of the great advantages of having dehydrated morels. Here is some frozen morels that I've thawed in a vacuum sealed package. And we'll open this up and just see what they look like. And they definitely have a more similar feel or texture, fleshy feel, like fresh morels. So I'm going to put both of these, a few of these in a pan and cook out a little bit of the water that's in them, and then add some butter, thyme, and some garlic, and we'll do a taste test comparison real quick here. Okay, we'll start with the frozen morels on the left there, and the dehydrated morels here on the right. So I'm just going to cook a little bit of the moisture out of those before I hit them with some butter, and then followed by garlic and thyme. All right, we'll go ahead and throw some butter in there. And some garlic and thyme. Okay, we'll go ahead and transfer those to a plate. Okay, so I've got my frozen morels here. I'll try this one first. That tastes really good. Very similar to a fresh morel. Got a good texture and really good flavor. Okay, let's try the rehydrated morels. Whoa. The flavor is actually more intense in the dehydrated morels. I think because there's less moisture content in them, it concentrates it. The texture is also a little bit crunchier than the frozen morels, but they're both really good. So I think both techniques are really excellent ways to preserve your morel harvest. The added benefit with the dehydrated ones is that you get the extra mushroom broth and you don't have the storage issues in your freezer. And you can actually send them through the mail to friends as well. But either way, you can't go wrong with dehydrating morels or freezing them. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more great content from Spilt Milk Productions. I'll see you next time.